Did I just do that?
Did I do that?
Well, definitely with my assistance.
I did not just do that.
We did.
I just
Shut down a studio.
with my mind.
Perhaps our connection has somehow awoken some abilities.
I just
Shut down a studio.
with my mind.
I just keep hearing I.
I just
Shut down a studio.
with my freaking mind! Yeah, okay, that is something I do now.
Get studios shut down and review poorly.
You know what? I'll probably
Get Game of the Year.
next.
Now you're just being ridiculous.
Oh, that's too far.
That line of Molly burns! It burns! Oh, come on, Frit, you're better than this. Don't resort to snorting stuff. Well, I'm sorry, what do you want me to do? We're living during some incredibly depressing times. When the best game Sony has to show off at the beginning of the year is Forspoken, you know things aren't going too well for us. And when I say us, I mean me, a PC gamer, because I get to play PlayStation games on my PC, and if this is what Sony is offering me, then it ain't looking like too bright of a future. But sadly, the truth is Sony isn't even the worst offender here. That actually goes to Square Enix, the company that's been kept alive by an MMO about as old as the PlayStation Move and Xbox Connect, but sadly too blinded by the cringe known as Kingdom Hearts. What are those? Square Enix fans don't actually realize how bad the company is doing. Well, they're doing so bad that last year they had to sell off their entire Western game studios, branches like Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal. That's right, you heard me. Square Enix sold off Tomb Raider and Deus Ex to goddamn Embracer Group. Goddamn Deus Ex. You have any idea how much that one hurts? Never forget, they traded off Deus Ex and one of the most iconic female gaming protagonists of all time so that they could bet all of their money on Luminous Productions and Forspoken instead. Remember, instead of using the popular, already established female protagonist, Lara Croft, they gave you Frey. They sold off all the years of brilliant writing for the character JC Denton so that they could give you Frey's dialogue instead. They really placed all of their bets on Luminous Productions to make them a Western game big enough to replace franchises like Tomb Raider and Deus Ex. Just think about that. When it comes to their Western studios, Square doesn't have a single clue what they're doing. Founded in 2018, and less than 2 years after being founded, they dropped the trailer for what the PlayStation fanboys were drooling over for a long time. Project Athia, a trailer that showed a whole lot of nothing, other than a glimpse into the dark future of what was to come. And looking back, watching this trailer, 2 years later, I'm beginning to notice that it was actually nothing more than a test build for the Luminous engine. No actual project planned here. It was just a flashy tech demo meant to get people's attention, and then they would build a game around it afterwards. Hence why it was called Project Athia 2 years ago and finalized to Forspoken. And finally, when they did actually have some gameplay to show to people a year later, it didn't look anywhere near as good or run anywhere near as good as what we saw in the original reveal trailer. Because this time around, we finally got to see the game in motion and hear the character talk. Oh yeah, don't forget the frame dips. Oh my god, the frame dips when it was revealed. And let's not forget about the intentionally programmed hip-hoppy walk the developers gave the black protagonist.
Just full of the exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
You can tell this game was made by a Japanese studio within like the first hour playing it. Frey's a registered criminal living in the ghetto. Oh yeah, let's not forget the proud sneaker collection she displays. The only thing she was missing was some Gucci socks and sandals. At the very least, this Japanese studio understood that black people totally still wear puffy jackets from the 2000s. Honestly, what the hell was Square thinking green-lighting this? And more importantly, what was Sony thinking handing over money to make it exclusive? I know Sony and Square work together a lot to ensure games don't come to Xbox, but goddamn, usually they're good games. This is single-handedly the worst exclusivity deal I've ever seen Sony get. Did no one at Sony Interactive come to check on the quality of this product? Did Sony not ask if they could see the game before paying for exclusivity? I need a documentary at the minimum of 10 hours long explaining to me what happened. I've seen studios with far less successful franchises existing for longer periods of time than Luminous Productions. They only lasted from 2018 to 2023 because if you didn't hear the news, Forspoken was so bad and bombed so hard that Square Enix basically shut down Luminous Productions.
Oh no! What happened? Oh no! How terrible! That's just awful! How terrible! Oh no!
Fred, you're misrepresenting. That's not what happened. Okay. Sorry. Square Enix disbanded Luminous Productions and absorbed all the talent back into their main branch. Well, doesn't that still mean they shut down the studio for it? Yes, it does mean that, but we have to tiptoe around the PlayStation fanboys' feelings. They still refuse to believe a PlayStation exclusive could ever be that bad.
An update from Luminous Productions. You may have heard the news that Luminous Productions is merging with Square Enix. Beginning on May 1st, our talented team will join Square Enix to deliver new innovative gaming experiences to players across the globe. Between now and then we remain entirely focused on Forspoken. We are currently working on the previously announced patch to address overall game performance, and the DLC, In Tonto We Trust, is on track for release this summer. Thank you for your patience and support. When we established Luminous Productions in 2018, our vision was to make AAA games that fused technology and artistry to deliver completely new play experiences. Having the chance to do just that has been a dream come true. We appreciate you taking this journey with us and look forward to continuing to create new entertainment and new experiences as part of the Square Enix family. Sincerely, the Luminous Productions team.
Their dream was to create entirely new player experiences, yet they use the exact same open world formula Ubisoft has for the last 12 years. Thank God that these developers weren't fired and still have a job within Square Enix, because it's obvious all of this is the result of poor management. But goddamn, to only exist for 5 years with one game and then be immediately disbanded after that one game is published? Not even 343, not even goddamn 343, which means Forspoken must have bombed really hard. And let's be real, deservingly so. I couldn't find a single redeemable thing about the game. People say, oh, the movement, the combat, that was all pretty good. I'm sorry, but no, it's not good enough to keep you occupied for 30 hours. But what's quite honestly the biggest slap in the face is the price they charged you for the performance you were getting on your hardware. A lot of people were surprised, but I wasn't. We're talking about the same Square Enix that wanted over $200 for the Kingdom Hearts collection on PC, which they locked behind the Epic Games Store at the time. We're talking about the same Square Enix that milked Final Fantasy VII into 3 parts, when back in the 90s they gave you the full game on 3 discs as a complete package. To this day, they still haven't finished the remake for Final Fantasy VII. The PS4 and the Xbox One were still relatively new when the teaser trailer to the Final Fantasy VII remake first came out. We're talking well over 7 years ago. Clearly, if there's anyone to blame, it's Square Enix. I couldn't really name you a single thing they've done that made me happy in the last 5 years, unless it was coming from Eidos Montreal, which Square Enix sold off to a giant tech conglomerate, who has even less passion for video games than Square. All the resources spent on creating Luminous Productions Studio went down the f***ing drain.
Imagine reading this and thinking this is bad news. Pure craziness.
Exactly how is there a silver lining in any of this? This can only be interpreted as bad news. Announcing that a studio is going to be merged back into the main company a month after releasing a game that bombed is not good news. Good news would be if they said, oh, expect a sequel. That studio's getting funding for an even bigger, more ambitious project. No, that's not happening. Whatever independence they shared from Square Enix is gone. That's not good. They're probably gonna all be sent back to working on Square Enix mobile games. That is their fate. They went from making AAA games back to making mobile UIs. This is a major demotion, not a promotion. I've never seen a PlayStation fanboy in such hardcore denial. Before release, Jay Barry was out here talking about how he was gonna be playing Forspoken in 120 FPS with ray tracing enabled, only to end up playing at 720p, 28 FPS.
This definitely means Forspoken was successful. I think Square should merge with Sony PlayStation. I will never pretend to like a game just because 90% of the people around me hype it up. I'm glad I wasn't alone by speaking with my wife. The game is great, and just because you chose not to buy it, it doesn't mean it wasn't successful. It just means you chose to miss out on a great game. I believe this means the opposite. Square chose to get rid of Crystal Dynamics, but saw fit to reacquire Luminous Productions. Sounds like they did something right. Forspoken is the best game I've played this year. I think it's dumb people skipping this, because when they eventually play it, oh wow, this game is great. It's weird J-Lo's infamous, but skips this game in my opinion, respectfully.
I really wanna say the N-word.
Oh my god, what a giant faggot! PlayStation fanboy infighting. You'll love to see it. Who would have ever thought that JTech TV would be the retard out of all of them to have the base take? No, the studio being shut down doesn't mean the game wasn't successful. It actually means the opposite. Just listen to that stupidity. Square choosing to get rid of Crystal Dynamic but reacquiring Luminous Productions doesn't mean they did anything right. In fact, it means Square f***ed up majorly. Having to disband Luminous Productions after getting rid of Crystal Dynamic is not a good thing. It shows that Square is incompetent. Because first off, they sold Crystal Dynamic and Eidos Montreal for too little. Then they put all their money on Luminous Productions, only to have to dissolve the studio a few years later. This is not the news you're supposed to hear when a game is successful. When a game is successful, they'll be bragging about sales figures, review scores, and potential sequels. Well, let's not forget the infamous PlayStation fanboy journalist, Hunter, who blocked me on Twitter, by the way. This man, at any single opportunity he got to stand up for Forspoken, did so. He would also go out of his way to tweet about Forspoken, topping any sort of charts. But did you once see him tweet about Luminous Productions shutting down? No! No, you didn't! His reporting on bad video game news is only reserved for Xbox. This man was out here saying it was one of the best games of the year.
I'd rather pay $70 for this gem than $30 for Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, you know what though, Rome? Between both games, only one of them is guaranteed to get a sequel. I'll let you take a guess at which one it is.
Wow, y'all dumped on Forspoken so much, the company closed down. The game was great for what it was. I'm glad I played, still playing actually. But y'all gassed the most mid of games ever.
You better stop it now. Calling the game mid is far too generous, and you know it. It was straight up a dumpster fire. The studio didn't shut down because the game was getting roasted. The studio shut down because the game didn't sell that well. And the reception was beyond terrible. Why would you blame the gamers for this one? I salute PlayStation fans who understood this game was trash and avoided it. You know, it says a lot when JTech TV is the most sane person in the room. And the only one of the PlayStation fanboys with the balls to admit that the game sucks. I mean, just take a look at the Red Dragon. Not a single report from him on Forspoken being so bad Luminous Productions shut down. Instead, he finds the need to report on Hi-Fi Rush hitting 2 million players and saying that it's too low because Game Pass has 25 million users. He avoids having to report bad news on PlayStation games like he avoids sex. Instead, he wants to try and spin the news of Hi-Fi Rush, you know, an indie game that was shadow dropped with no promotional work hitting 2 million players as something bad. They are so goddamn salty! How the hell can you even spin the news of a AA game reaching 2 million players as being a bad thing, and ignore the AAA game that flopped that was supposed to be in the millions?
I beat it and loved it. Can't wait for the DLC. To each its own, I guess.
J-Dub actually beating a game. Now that's a surprise, especially when it's a PlayStation game. He doesn't do that too often. With a completion rate of 17%, you know all that time spent gathering trophies is spent making tweets. Now I usually don't expect J-Dub to beat his games, but when I do, I expect it to be the good games, not the shit ones. Had this been marked as an Xbox game, he would have never even touched it. Now, the only thing you've convinced me that you did here, J-Dub, was beat it. But I don't know if you loved it. If you loved it, it would have been platinumed. Then again, in general, I have trouble believing you even like video games more than Twitter. My god, the only time the ponies will beat their games is when it's the trashy-ass ones, like GT7 and Forspoken.
I thought Tomb Raiders were big sellers. Why did they sell Crystal Dynamics? The fact they want to keep Luminous Productions and incorporate them into their own teams says a lot, really, doesn't it, Jaycock?
Again, how in the world can you look at a studio that only existed for about 5 years before they got folded after the release of one game and try to spin it as a positive thing? They lost their independence. Them folding the studio and selling off Crystal Dynamics doesn't say a lot. Well, I mean, it does. Actually, never mind. It says a lot about how stupid Square Enix is and how incompetent they are. Keeping the people that didn't make a good game and selling off the ones that made banger after banger makes no goddamn sense. Honestly, the damage control over this announcement has been outstanding. Bravo. I congratulate all of you. Y'all been putting in the overtime to protect this game. Quite admirable, really. I guess you really did like the game. But when that 2-year exclusivity deal runs out, I wonder how many of you will start realizing just how shit it really is. I mean, it is the same group that defended Gran Turismo 7. You know, the same group that has no problem talking about Halo Infinite's incomplete state, while also dropping $70 on some of the most abysmal AAA third-party exclusives. And after all that talk about being the ones who buy games and support developers and studios, apparently not enough of you bought Forspoken. Now all the developers gotta pay by going back to working at the main office. Wasn't even that long ago gaming journalists were coming out telling us to stop blaming the game's protagonist for its failure. And we can all talk about how the game failed, but we can't talk about why it failed. The journalists still refuse to give up on this game. They still want to convince you that it's a lot better than people are making it out to be. I mean, just take a look at this brilliant article.
When it comes to magic, Hogwarts Legacy could learn a spell from Forspoken.
Exactly what should Hogwarts Legacy learn from the game that flopped so hard the studio got shut down? When a studio gets shut down, you don't take a single bit of advice from anything they develop. You steer clear away from it. The game's only been out for like, what, a month? And people are already finding fresh, unopened copies in landfill dumps?
Foi fracasso quando a GameStop do shopping que você trampa joga no lixo, cara, os steelbooks do jogo. Olha que vergonha. Tá maluco, cara. Esse jogo foi...
This shit is about to be the next ET for Atari of our generation. There was already promotional offers for discounts on the game a month in. The studio gets shut down a month in, and dumpsters are filled with copies of the games a month in. Meanwhile, Hogwarts Legacy is even more successful than Elden Ring was last year, and you mean to tell us that it needs to learn from this game? I can't even find a single report from this journalist talking about how Luminous Productions got folded.
The narrative behind those two releases couldn't be more dissimilar, but the games themselves aren't actually all that different. Both are story-heavy fantasy open-world games built around magic-based combat and exploration. Each has different strengths and weaknesses, but the more I've had time to reflect on them, the more puzzled I am by the enormous gulf in public reception. For all its grainy dialogue and scattered design decisions, Forspoken's creative approach to magic is miles ahead of Hogwarts Legacy. If the Harry Potter game is going to be lauded as genre-defining work, then Forspoken deserves a cynicism-free revisit.
You know, this journalist has a massive hate boner for Hogwarts. I already seen his previous work. But to hate Hogwarts so much you got a cap for Forspoken? What is quite possibly one of the biggest AAA failures in the last 10 years? Are you serious? There is nothing in Forspoken anybody should ever turn back to. It's being erased in landfill dumps just like ET cartridges were. My god, after everything that's happened, I can't believe there is still this much damage control for Forspoken. It's been made crystal clear that the game was a failure, critically and financially. Hopefully this gets Square Enix to wake the f up and start making some actual games again. Not just Final Fantasies, not just Dragon Quest spin-offs, but something new that actually shakes up the JRPG world. But honestly, after they greenlit Forspoken, I don't trust these guys. I don't have any faith in them. And it should honestly get Sony to reconsider their relationship with Square Enix until they get their shit together anyway. But most importantly, I gotta get my shit together. What am I doing? Snorting lines of Molly at 1 a.m. That's why you should all like, comment, share, subscribe if you so choose to. And depending on how this bump goes, maybe I'll see you soon.
If I knew that I didn't wait on this story, Tango Plays would have made a video roasting me for about 30 minutes.
You're goddamn right.